The first time I saw it, my brain refused to accept what my eyes were doing. The road was the same. The wind was the same. The wide open silence I'd paid for was supposed to be the same. But there it was anyway, sitting on my land like it had always belonged there. A full-sized, modern house, poured foundation, finished exterior, landscaping, the whole thing. And beside it, a woman standing with her arms crossed like she was waiting for me. Like I was the one who showed up uninvited. Like I'd wandered onto somebody else's property by mistake. Because what happened next wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a takeover. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to HOA and Karen's stories and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? My name's Mike, and I didn't buy land to flip it. I didn't buy it to build a development, and I sure as hell didn't buy it to join an HOA. I bought it because I wanted quiet. Real quiet. The kind you can't get in a neighborhood where somebody's always measuring your grass with a ruler and counting your trash cans like it's a hobby. 5 years earlier, I'd had enough. I was done with cities telling me what was acceptable. Done with neighbors who lived to complain. Done with rules written by people who didn't even own a single inch of dirt. So I cashed out, packed light, and bought a piece of raw land far enough out that nobody cared what color my roof was. It was about 20 acres, no HOA. No shared fences, no community standards. Just me, the sky, and a stretch of land that felt like freedom the second I stepped onto it. And I didn't rush into anything either. Before I signed a single paper, I checked everything. The deed, the survey, the parcel boundaries. I even walked the perimeter myself with the GPS unit just to be sure. Old habits. The land was recorded properly with the county, clean and clear, no easements, no weird shared access, no hidden strings. I fixed it up slowly, made it livable, made it mine. Then life yanked me away. Family obligations, work. One thing after another until a few months turned into years. But I didn't abandon the land. I prepared it. Before I left, I did 3 things that matter more than people realize. First, I set my property taxes to auto-pay every year, no exceptions. Because in this country, land isn't claimed by who talks the loudest. It's claimed by paperwork, receipts, and patience. Second, I kept my insurance active and my mailing address current. The county always knew where to find me. There was never a question of ownership. Third, I installed 2 solar-powered trail cameras. Nothing flashy, no blinking lights, no visible mounts. Just quiet little units strapped high in trees, angled toward the access points. I'd seen enough boundary disputes in my life to know one thing. When land sits empty, people get curious. And curiosity has a way of stepping over lines. For 5 years, the property sat exactly the way I left it. I checked in when I could, paid what needed paying, let it be. To me, that land wasn't vacant, it was waiting. So when I finally came back, when that dusty road felt familiar again and the horizon opened up the way it always had, I expected to unlock my place, sweep out some cobwebs, and settle back into the quiet I'd paid for. What I didn't expect was a house. Not a shed, not a trailer, not a temporary structure. A house. Concrete foundation, fresh stucco. Gravel beds, trimmed shrubs. A paved drive cutting straight through what used to be open ground I'd walked and measured with my own feet. And standing near the end of that driveway was a woman who looked at me like I was the problem. I sat there for a moment with my engine still running, dust drifting past the hood like nothing had changed. The same wind, the same wide sky, except it wasn't quiet anymore. Not really. I shut off the engine and stepped out. The truck door closed with that heavy, clean thud you only hear when there's nothing around to swallow sound. I didn't march up to the house right away. I just stood there, staring, letting the reality sink in. The house was newer than anything within miles. Clean lines, fresh landscaping. That planned community, look, people pay extra for, and it was sitting exactly where my empty ground was supposed to be. I pulled out my phone and opened my GPS app, more out of instinct than doubt. The dot blinked once, then settled. Right where I thought it would. I looked up again. Still a house. That's when she spoke. "You can't park there." Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It had that confident tone that assumes you'll agree before you even think. I turned slowly. She was mid-50s maybe, haircut short and sprayed into place, sunglasses on, arms crossed tight. Everything about her posture said she wasn't surprised to see me. If anything, she looked prepared. "I'm just stopping by my place," I said. She shook her head once, like a teacher correcting a student. "No, you're not." I glanced at the truck, then at the house, then back at her. "This is my land," I said, calm, flat, not a debate. A fact. Her mouth curled into a smile that wasn't friendly, more like someone humoring a child. "This is Sun Mesa Estates," she said. "You're on HOA property." There it was. HOA. I hadn't heard that acronym in years, and the second it hit the air again, I felt that old irritation wake up like it had been sleeping in my bones. "I think you're mistaken," I said. "This parcel isn't part of any HOA." She gave a soft little laugh, practiced, like she'd used it before. "It is now." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't wave paperwork around like some desperate guy trying to prove he belongs. Instead, I walked a few steps toward an old oak near the drive, the one I remember because it leaned slightly east, roots half exposed from years of wind. I pointed at it. "That tree," I said. "That's the eastern marker." She followed my finger and shrugged. "The boundaries were updated while you were gone." That sentence landed heavier than she meant it to. "Updated how?" I asked. "Survey adjustments," she said, casual. "Community alignment. It happens." "By who?" She hesitated just long enough for me to notice. "The county," she said. "You must have missed the notices." I hadn't missed anything. I kept every notice, every receipt, every statement. But I didn't hand her that truth yet. I asked the question that mattered. "And the house," I said, nodding toward the concrete and fresh stucco. "When was it built?" Her smile tightened. "About 3 years ago. Right in the middle of my absence." I nodded slowly, feeling my patience turn colder. "So someone built a permanent structure," I said, "on land that wasn't theirs." She sighed like I was wasting her time. "You really should talk to the HOA," she said. "This doesn't need to get complicated." I looked her straight in the eye. "It already is." She took off her sunglasses, and that's when I saw what was underneath. Not confusion, not concern. Calculation. She wasn't worried about being wrong. She was worried about being challenged. "My name is Brenda Collins," she said. "I'm the HOA president, and if you plan on staying here, you'll need to follow community rules like everyone else." I let the silence sit, thick and honest between us. "I don't belong to your community," I said. She stepped closer, voice sharpening. "Then you'll need to," she said, "or we'll have to address the violations." "Violations," I repeated. She gestured vaguely toward my truck, toward my land, toward everything like she owned the whole horizon. "Unauthorized access," she said. "Trespassing. Non-compliance." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. "You're telling me," I said slowly, "that I'm trespassing on my own land." She didn't blink. "That's correct," she said, "according to our records." And right there, standing in dust and silence, staring at a house that didn't belong and a woman who acted like she'd already won, I realized something sharp and simple. This wasn't a misunderstanding I could fix with a conversation. This was a claim, and claims only end one of two ways. You back down, or you prove them wrong. So I told Brenda I'd be in touch, climbed back into my truck, and drove off without another word. But I didn't leave because I was scared. I left because I was done talking. And because the next time I came back to that land, I wasn't coming back with questions. I was coming back with receipts, records, and the kind of proof that turns a bully's confidence into panic. The notice arrived 3 days later, not by email, not with a phone call, but by certified mail, the kind that makes a point of existing. I stood at the kitchen counter holding the envelope for a moment before opening it, already knowing exactly what it would say. Thick paper. Official letterhead. That beige, carefully neutral HOA logo designed to look harmless while it digs in. Sun Mesa Estates Homeowners Association. Official notice of violation. I read it once. Then again, slower. According to the letter, my property was now considered part of Sun Mesa Estates. According to the letter, I was in violation of multiple community standards. Unauthorized access. Failure to maintain community aesthetic. Non-compliant driveway materials. Unapproved vehicle parking. And then the part they'd clearly been building toward. Outstanding HOA dues for 5 years, plus late penalties, plus administrative fees. The total sat at the bottom of the page like a dare. I set the letter down and let the room go quiet. I wasn't angry yet. Anger comes later. What I felt was curiosity. Because attached to the notice was a single-page map, printed in color, neatly labeled, clean lines, lot numbers, scale bar. And it was wrong. At first glance, it looked close enough to pass, close enough that most people wouldn't question it. But the eastern boundary, the one nearest Brenda's house, had shifted. Not much. 30, maybe 40 feet, just enough. I pulled my original survey from the folder I'd kept for years, the one labeled in black marker and never touched because I never needed to. I laid it next to the HOA map on the counter. The difference was subtle, but once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. Their line crept inward. Mine didn't. Mistakes happen. I've seen plenty of them. But mistakes don't usually benefit one specific house so precisely. I read the letter again, slower this time. The language was confident, careful, written to sound final. It didn't ask me to respond. It instructed me to comply. 30 days to join the HOA, 30 days to bring my property into compliance, 30 days to pay everything they said I owed. Failure to do so would result in escalation. I smiled at that word, escalation. I flipped the page and checked the signature block. Brenda Collins, HOA President. Printed, not signed. That told me something too. I poured a cup of coffee and sat down at the table with both maps spread out in front of me. I thought about what Brenda had said, about boundaries being updated, about the county being involved. And I thought about what she hadn't said. There were no permit numbers listed anywhere in the packet. No reference to a recorded easement. No documentation of a boundary agreement. Just authority. Assumed authority. I made a short list on a legal pad. County records. Tax assessor. Survey history. Permits. Then I stood up, walked out to my truck, and grabbed the small lockbox from behind the seat. Inside was the memory card from one of the trail cameras. I hadn't checked it yet. I hadn't needed to. Until now. This wasn't a misunderstanding they were trying to fix. This was a story they were trying to lock in. And stories fall apart when they meet facts. I didn't call Brenda. I didn't email the HOA. I didn't respond at all. Instead, I opened my laptop and logged into the county database. I started with the assessor's records. Parcel number, owner name, tax history, everything checked out. My name was still there. The acreage hadn't changed. Taxes paid every year on time. Next, I pulled the recorded plats, the boring files nobody looks at unless there's trouble. I opened the most recent one and compared it to the version from years earlier. The boundary lines were identical. I leaned back in my chair and let that sink in. If the county's official record hadn't changed, then Brenda's map wasn't an update. It was an invention. I moved on to permits. I searched by address, then by parcel number, then by adjacent lots. Brenda's house had permits, plumbing, electrical, structural. But something was missing. There was no permit for an expansion near the eastern boundary. No variance, No recorded encroachment. No easement. The foundation footprint on the permit drawings didn't match what I'd seen in person. Not by much, but enough. I zoomed in on the drawings, then overlaid them with the county GIS data. That's when I saw it. The permit drawings were based on a boundary file that didn't exist in the county system anymore. Metadata showed it had been created years ago, modified once, then abandoned. Convenient. Someone had taken an old internal file, tweaked it just enough, and used it as the foundation for everything that came after. Not official enough to stand on its own, but official enough to scare most people into compliance. I printed everything and laid it out across the table. Brenda's map sat in the middle like a bad forgery. The next morning, I called the assessor's office. I didn't mention Brenda. I didn't mention the HOA. I asked one simple question. Has my parcel boundary changed in the last 10 years? The clerk didn't hesitate. No, she said, not according to our records. I thanked her and hung up. Then I called the planning department. This time, I asked about permits near my eastern boundary. There was a pause. No variances, the planner said. No recorded encroachments. I wrote it down. Then I asked the question I already knew the answer to. Would a private HOA have the authority to redraw parcel boundaries? She laughed. No, she said. Absolutely not. That was it. The last doubt fell away. Brenda hadn't misunderstood anything. She hadn't been misled. She hadn't been confused. She'd sidestepped the truth and hoped no one would check. I gathered everything into a single folder and labeled it with the date. Then I picked up my phone and called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. A licensed surveyor named Darren, an old colleague from back when I still dealt with land disputes for a living. When he answered, I didn't explain. I just said, I need you to look at something. When? He asked. I looked out the window toward the eastern boundary, where the land dipped just enough to hide what didn't belong there. Soon, I said, very soon, because now I wasn't reacting anymore. I was preparing. And Brenda Collins had no idea what kind of man she'd just tried to rewrite on paper. Darren showed up just after sunrise, the way professionals always do when they know something matters. Same truck, same calm posture, same quiet confidence I remembered. He stepped out, took one look toward the eastern edge where Brenda's house sat too close to my line, and didn't say a word. That silence told me everything. We didn't start with opinions. We started with measurements. Tripod down. Receiver calibrated. Coordinates locked. Darren moved like the land itself was giving him instructions, methodical and patient, letting the numbers speak instead of his mouth. I walked the perimeter with him, pointing out the markers I remembered. The leaning oak tree, the crooked fence post, the shallow dip where rain always collected in the spring. He nodded, logging coordinates without commentary. Hours passed that way. The sun climbed. The wind shifted, the kind of open, exposed day where nothing feels hidden anymore. When Darren sent the drone up, I felt something tighten in my chest. Not fear. Anticipation. On his tablet, the land assembled itself in layers. County, GIS, recorded plat. Current imagery, reality stacking neatly on top of reality. And then, right where Brenda's confidence lived, the lines stopped agreeing with her story. Darren zoomed in, then out, then back in again. There it is, he said quietly. The eastern boundary cut straight through the corner of Brenda's property. Not inches, not a foot. A significant portion. The back of the garage. Part of the patio. A chunk of the sunroom she'd proudly referred to as her executive space, about 800 square feet. That wasn't a mistake. That was a decision. No easement, Darren said. No variance. No agreement. He tapped the screen once more. This shouldn't be here. Before he packed up, he did something I didn't ask for but deeply appreciated. He walked over to the corner of the patio where concrete crossed onto my land, pulled a neon orange survey stake from his truck, and drove it into the dirt with a sledgehammer. Each strike rang out loud and clean, echoing off the house. Metal, steel, earth. The stake stood tall, impossible to miss, right beside Brenda's manicured flower bed. "Just so nobody's confused," Darren said, "we documented everything. Photos, video passes, coordinate logs." By the time the sun dipped low, Darren handed me a flash drive. "Licensed, notarized, court-ready," he said. I thanked him and watched the dust trail behind his truck disappear down the road. Then I stood there alone for a long moment, staring at the house, the concrete, and that bright orange line that reality had finally drawn in permanent ink. That night, I laid everything out on the kitchen table. My deed, county plats, Darren's survey, drone imagery. 4 versions of the same truth. Only one of them had been lying. Then I pulled the memory card from the trail camera. I hadn't looked at it yet, not really. I'd wanted the land to speak for itself first. Now that it had, I was ready to hear the rest. The early footage was boring. Wind, coyotes, trucks passing on the road. Weeks of nothing. Then I scrolled back to the time when the house was being built. There she was. Brenda stood near the edge of my land, phone pressed to her ear, pacing like someone rehearsing lines. She pointed toward the open dirt where the patio now sat. "He doesn't even know," she said. I paused the video, rewound it, played it again. "He still thinks the line's back there," she continued, waving her arm toward the oak tree. "Just adjust the layout like we planned. I'll handle the rest." The words settled into the room like concrete. She wasn't alone. A man stood nearby with rolled plans under his arm. A contractor. Someone who knew enough to ask questions and not enough to walk away. "I thought he filed something," the man said. Brenda scoffed. "He won't. And even if he does, I'll say it was a survey error. It happens all the time." I watched the clip until she walked out of frame. Another video loaded automatically. Different day. Same spot. This time she stood with 2 men, pointing at wooden stakes already set in the ground. "Shift it," she said. "Just a few feet." One of the men hesitated. "That's not what the map shows." "That's the map we're using," Brenda snapped. I leaned back and let the silence stretch. This wasn't confusion. This was management. I backed up the footage. Twice. Labeled the files. Stored them in 3 places. Old habits don't die. They save you. The next escalation came fast. One morning, I stepped outside and smelled it before I saw it. Rotting food. Sour trash. 3 black garbage bags dumped near my shed, split open, contents spilling into the dirt. Fast food containers. Broken glass. Something sticky already pulling flies out of nowhere. I didn't touch a thing. I went inside and pulled up the camera footage. Timestamp 2:37 in the morning. A man in a hoodie walked onto my land carrying the bags. No gloves. No mask. Nervous movements. He dumped them quickly, glanced around once, then jogged back toward Sun Mesa. I zoomed in. Clear face. 3 hours later, my phone buzzed. An email from the HOA. Urgent sanitation violation. According to them, residents had complained about unsanitary conditions on my property, health concerns, pest risks. They warned me that if the issue wasn't resolved immediately, they'd contact the county health department. Bold move. I forwarded the footage to the sheriff's office and filed an incident report for illegal dumping and trespass. Then I sent it to my attorney. "This isn't HOA enforcement," he said when he called back. "This is harassment." That afternoon, another notice arrived, this one about my dog. Apparently, my dog wasn't an approved breed under community guidelines. Complaints had been filed about noise and safety. My dog is old, quiet, sleeps more than I do. They weren't trying to win anymore. They were trying to hurt. The sheriff called the next morning. "We picked him up," the deputy said. "The guy who dumped the trash. Cash job. He told us who paid him. I didn't ask." "Short blonde hair?" I said. Fake smile. The deputy laughed once. "That's the one." By the end of the week, the narrative inside Sun Mesa started to crack. HOA emails softened. Accusations turned into alleged concerns. Deadlines became requests. Then my phone rang. "I'm calling unofficially," a man said. "I'm on the HOA board." He sounded tired. "She told us you were hostile," he said. "Armed. Dangerous." I looked down at my dog asleep at my feet. "I own a grill and a satellite dish," I said. "That's about it," he exhaled. "That's not how she described you." That was the first crack. More followed. Quiet questions. Careful texts. Someone forwarded me an internal email accusing me of disrupting community harmony. Someone else asked, very politely, if I had documentation. I shared nothing. Not yet. Instead, my attorney sent a formal packet to the HOA, to Brenda personally, and to the county. Survey results. Drone imagery. Incident numbers. A single request. Stop. No more notices. No more contact. No more enforcement until the boundary dispute was resolved legally. The response came fast. A letter from the HOA's law firm, confident tone. Long paragraphs. Accusations of misrepresentation. Defamation. Damage to a volunteer leader's reputation. My attorney smiled. "Truth is an absolute defense," he said. "They're bluffing." We replied with one sentence at the bottom. "Please advise your client to preserve all records relevant to this matter." That sentence changes behavior. That night, I checked the camera near the shed. There was Brenda again, standing at the boundary, pointing directly at the neon orange stake Darren had driven into the ground. "Pull that out," she said to a contractor. "Move the pins back." "That's a survey marker," the man said. "We're not supposed to." "Nobody measures twice," Brenda snapped. "Just do it." I saved the clip, because at that moment the story shifted one last time. This wasn't just a land dispute anymore. This was someone trying to erase the truth from the ground itself. And that's the point where people stop making mistakes, start committing crimes. I didn't go public out of anger. I went public because silence stopped being neutral. Up until that moment, Brenda had controlled the story. HOA emails. Whispered meetings. Side-eye looks across fences. She was counting on confusion to do the heavy lifting for her, on the idea that most people would rather give up a little truth than fight a well-organized lie. So I changed the lighting. I put together a timeline. No opinions. No insults. Just dates, documents, maps, surveys, drone images, and video clips. I let the facts speak in their own calm, undeniable voice. Then I sent the packet to 3 places that don't care about HOA politics. The county assessor, the planning department, the sheriff's office. The first call came from the county. "We need to review something," the clerk said carefully. "Your boundary appears unchanged." "I know," I replied. The planning department followed. No approved encroachment. No variance. No authority for the structure as built. And then came the sheriff, in person this time, standing near the neon orange stake, like it was a witness that had finally been called to the stand. "You've got a paper trail," he said. "And now you've got video." He paused, then asked the question that mattered most. "Has anyone asked you to move that marker?" I shook my head. "That would be a serious problem," he said. Inside Sun Mesa, everything shifted. Someone leaked my packet to the neighborhood email list. I didn't authorize it. I didn't stop it either. Questions replaced accusations. Confidence turned into nervous explanations. Brenda sent a long message blaming contractors, clerks, misunderstandings, outside agitators. She never addressed the footage. She couldn't. By the end of the week, the HOA's attorney sent another letter, shorter, cautious. Enforcement actions related to my property were being temporarily suspended pending legal review. Translation: they were backing away. That evening, a board member named Felix knocked on my door. He looked exhausted. "She didn't tell us everything," he said quietly. I poured him a glass of water and listened. She'd told the board I was hostile, dangerous, a problem. She'd framed the stake as intimidation. The footage changed everything. Before he left, Felix handed me a folder. No note. No return address. Inside were internal emails, meeting minutes, and scanned maps with handwritten edits. Brenda's handwriting. A warning memo telling the board not to raise red flags about the expansion. I called my attorney. "It's time," I said. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No drama. Just wood, fluorescent lights, and consequences. Brenda sat stiff beside her lawyer, hands clenched, eyes darting. Her attorney tried first, painted her as overwhelmed. A volunteer leader. An honest mistake. My attorney didn't argue, he presented. The deed, the county plat, Darren's license survey, drone overlays. Each exhibit landed quietly, like a door closing. Then the footage played. "He doesn't even know. Shift it. Pull that orange stake out." The judge leaned forward. "Did you authorize construction beyond the recorded boundary?" she asked Brenda. Her lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my client relied." "I asked your client," the judge said. Brenda swallowed. "I believed the boundary had changed." "Did you file for a variance?" "No." "Did you obtain a recorded easement?" "No." "Did you instruct anyone to remove a survey marker?" Her lawyer touched her arm. Brenda shook him off. "Yes," she said. That was enough. The judge didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Because the structure had been built using fraudulent boundary representations, because no permits authorized the encroachment, and because evidence showed deliberate attempts to destroy survey markers, the court ordered full removal of all encroaching structures and restoration of the land within 30 days. Demolition. The sound Brenda made wasn't anger. It was collapse. The judge wasn't finished. She barred Brenda from accessing any portion of my land and granted me the right to pursue damages. Outside the courtroom, her attorney pulled me aside. "She can't afford demolition," he said quietly. "I know," I replied. I had already prepared an offer. I would purchase the property at land value only. No credit for upgrades. No credit for the illusion. In exchange, I would waive demolition enforcement and settle civil damages. One condition. Brenda would sign a public acknowledgement of the boundary violation and permanently step down from any HOA leadership role. She refused at first, called it humiliating, cruel. Then her lawyer showed her the numbers. She signed the next morning. A week later, I held the keys. I didn't keep everything. I removed the parts that never belonged. The illegal garage. The patio. The sunroom she once bragged about. What remained, I transformed, not out of spite, out of principle. I painted it in colors no HOA would ever approve. Inside, I mounted photos, maps, and court orders. Near the entrance, I encased the neon orange survey stake in glass with a simple plaque beneath it. This line did not move. Brenda left town quietly. No goodbye. No announcement. Just an empty driveway and a sold sign. The HOA changed too. New leadership. New tone. Much quieter. I settled back into my routine. Morning coffee on the porch. Coyotes calling beyond the ridge. Sometimes I still glanced toward the eastern boundary out of habit, then remembered there was nothing left to watch. It was never about winning. It was about ground. About lines that exist whether you're standing there or not. Authority fades. Confidence cracks. But land remembers. One evening, I walked the perimeter one last time. The oak still leaned east. The fence post still stood crooked. The dirt felt the same under my boots. I stopped where the patio used to be, ran my hand through the soil, and smiled. Quiet had returned. And silence, I've learned, is the sound of things finally being where they belong. If you enjoyed this story and want more real HOA showdowns where truth beats power, make sure to like, subscribe to HOA and Karen Stories, and share this video. And tell us in the comments, have you ever dealt with an HOA nightmare of your own?